Sometimes life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland. Hi guys, and welcome to Yikesland. I am here with my fancy co-host.
It's Jelani Hoon.
And me, this schlub, Chris Fung.
Please.
We are here giving you the views from Yikesland, our podcast about depression and mental health, and whatever the opposite of that is.
That's right.
Going on up here. We are so happy that you are here with us today because it's another Tuesday. That means you made it to Tuesday, and I made it to Tuesday, and you guys made it to Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
Hoping that you guys reach out to us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast. We also tweet at Yikesland and post to our Facebook at Yikesland. You can also send us an email. Gmail's got those new autofill things, so you could really just autofill and see what it says. Send that to yikesland@gmail.com.
That's right. I want you to autofill Yikesland and let's see what happens, right? Let's see what it autofills.
I think it mostly just ends up having you set up appointments.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That sure is Yikesland for us. Well, I mean, thank you guys so much for joining us here. Thank you to my co-host, who is not a schlub. Yes, last week he totally blew me out of the water. I was like, oh, what am I doing here? I'm a schlub here. All right.
We're only going to do this podcast dressed in very disparate dress codes.
Yes.
Also, if you're just listening, to be clear, Jelani is wearing a black button-up shirt and a red tie, but with an open collar, which says, I dressed up, but I don't care.
That's right. That's how you do it.
Got a little bit of a bad streak in me.
Podcasting.
And I'm
dressing
just
up
wearing...
for an audio podcast if you're listening.
He looks good, we promise.
Yeah.
And I am just wearing an NYU hoodie.
It's fine. It's completely fine. I'd probably just wear it myself off camera as well.
To be real with you guys, I had to cut some strings off of this hoodie before we started, and it's not even mine. I stole it from an ex-boyfriend.
Oh, boy. So it's that sentence right there put me in a mental spiral where all of a sudden I was thinking, it's like, what happens if he like comes across this video, then he sees that hoodie, and then it's like a bunch of like you see all the equations in his head of like, oh my god, she took it.
I mean, then we probably shouldn't have been so forthcoming about our email address. 'Cause we gotta get an angry letter.
All right. Well, let's start the podcast out. Besides this banter, let's start off with how are you doing?
I'm okay today. Yesterday I had a bit of a sad day for pretty much no reason. I think I was just kind of burnt out from on the weekend. I usually work doubles. And I work like a lot. And so I kind of know that it will burn me out for at least part of Monday. But I just felt like quite unexpectedly sad about nothing on Monday. And it was partly like depression and partly because it was so cold out maybe. But it felt a little bit different. Like I had been feeling really good and really productive and or hopeful last time we talked, and it's not like, oh my god, that's all gone now, but it shook me a little bit because I was like feeling like I was on an upswing and like things were going good, and then I had a weird like tinge of like the memory of darkness. And I was like, oh no, it's still there. I thought it was gone, and like I didn't really think it was gone, but I had been feeling like it was gone, kind of like if you guys have ever had the stomach flu and then like you throw up and then you're starting to feel better and it's like such a relief. But then after a while you forget how much your stomach hurt right before you throw up and then it comes back and you're like, oh my God, even though this was only an hour ago, I forgot what it was like and it's the worst thing ever. So like it shook me a little bit, but I'm still here. It's still Tuesday. So.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, I know we've been talking a lot about like mental like thinking traps and self-sabotage, and so do you think that was like a little bit of that, maybe like where it kind of just like, you know, the depression reared its head and was like, hey, You think you're on an upswing? No.
I don't think so. No, that for sure is a thing that happens, and or a thing that I even do to myself when stuff is going well. I'll be like, but how well could it really be going? Because you're a cursed person and everything's always going to be bad.
No one is cursed. But we do deal with this.
Except for me. No.
Oh.
Who said that?
Who said that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm sure that was part of it. And or it's fine to feel bad sometimes. Like, that doesn't, your journey's not linear. And even if you're, you know, recovering or doing better or however you want to phrase it to yourself, it's not all going to be solid ups like that. And I know that, but it was just for sure. I was still like, like, who are you? When the depression monster was like, hey, what's up? I'm still here. And I was like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, no, you're still here?
I thought you left.
No, I'm still here.
Well, how are you?
I have been all right. Not too many issues or anything like that. I haven't like spiraled or anything like that. I think I've been staying consistently in the okay area. You know, I haven't like spiraled myself down. I haven't like done any super self-sabotage, especially since we had the discussion after the dream incident, I guess we'll call it. Mm-hmm. We'll call it Jelani's dream cycle. No, dream Kingdom Hearts dream. We'll call it Jelani's dream drop distance is what we'll call it, because it is a thing that happened. But since the last episode, there has been like some incidences like me just trying to slog through work and me kind of just like having like this, what's the word? I've had instances where I feel kind of like this very just like antsy feeling where it's like, oh, I don't feel okay right now. And I've had this before, and I think it might be like something with maybe anxiety or something like that, where just like I feel just very anxious, and I was like, oh, I kind of just want to like turn over this computer and flip this computer and just run away right now. I just want to run. I don't know where to, but just run away. Yeah, and that did strike me on like Thursday last week or something like that, like after the recording, you know, and sitting at work, doing just fine, trying to slog through it and keep my mind focused, and all of a sudden I just like it hits me, and like it's just kind of just a wave of just like, oh, I'm just like looking around and like, okay, something's a little weird, you know. Oh, you know, just start like stretching the body, and then like eventually just starts feeling very anxious. And I've had points with the anxiety that has happened where it has almost just out of nowhere hit me with a wave of just like anxiousness, and to the point where like I won't feel good at all, right? And I'll kind of feel like physically sick, right? Where I was like, my body just starts feeling just like, oh, I don't think I want to be here right now, but I don't know what it is. It's like this, I just feel very anxious. And like the worst I've ever gotten is like when it hit me and I was someplace, and I don't remember where, but legitimately just like no reason at all, like some tears started rolling down my face, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? What is going on? You know, it's like, it's almost like it's a weird physical manifestation of this, where all of a sudden like an emotion that you feel like doesn't fit the situation just pops out of nowhere. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that before. Has that ever happened to you?
I think that has very, very rarely happened to me.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it happens all the time to me or anything like that, but it's like I had it happen just recently. Sure. And then I haven't had it like really happen to me for a very long time. Maybe like, I want to say months maybe since the last before that, and before that maybe even close to maybe a year or two or something like that, where it was like they're not like on a common occurrence, but they're not like also in like a steady cycle of it happening, where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna get it every like 6 months, and like you know.
Well, I've always assumed that it was because of some sort of like trigger that you didn't even notice, but subconsciously you noticed it. and then you started freaking out like in an anxiety way because of the thing that you don't even know what it is yet. So I guess I've always assumed that there was a reason, but that like it was a reason unknown to you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
maybe I just have existential crisis every once in a while. Just like
Casual.
Oh, hello, But no, I don't know what it is. It happened like right at the end of my work week. I was just sitting there on a computer doing my normal work stuff. It's too boring for you guys. I don't want to listen to that. But this wave of just like anxiousness and just like it physically just like manifested itself into me, and I was like, oh no, and it almost makes me where it's like, oh, I can't sit, I gotta stand up. Oh, I can't stand up, I gotta sit. And it's very weird, and it doesn't last for very long. Like it didn't last very long that day either. Maybe roughly like 30-40 minutes or something like that, where it was like, oh, this is not right, something doesn't feel right, and I don't know what it is. It's almost like if I had a spider sense, if that would be what it was. It just like went off in my body, and I was like, I don't feel good right now, something's gonna happen, and it kind of threw me off a little bit for going into the weekend. And it was just a weird kind of just felt really weird. And then of course, besides that, going into the weekend, I just got super tired because of that.
Yeah.
I think I just blacked out for like 12 hours one of the days on the weekend. But like it happens every once in a while. But I haven't had any issues. I haven't really like sprouted myself out, or I haven't like got like trapped in my head or anything like that where I like spiraled out. But it was just a weird moment that happened, and I don't know if that's necessarily depression, but I think it's kind of related to mental illness in a whole, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that gets us a little bit onto our main topic for this episode, which I am lovingly calling, "Are you sure you're depressed?"
Oh boy. Yes.
But what we mean by that is I think we've both had conversations with people who have listened to the podcast recently about this kind of thing, and that's where a lot of our ideas for new episodes come from. So if you guys have any for us, feel free to reach out to us on social media or in person if you live here in Milwaukee with us. But it is also something that I've noticed I've gotten mushy about as far as my definitions, even when we're talking here on the podcast. And that is, obviously, I talk about a couple of my different, mental health, either diagnosed or undiagnosed things, but talk about eating disorders and OCD, like maybe ADHD. And what we don't really talk about as much, I think, is anxiety. And you mentioned feeling anxious just now. And I think that the physical reaction that you had is definitely reads very much like anxiety to me, based on my past experiences and usually what anxiety looks like. And so today we were going to talk a little bit about what sort of things that we think depression really looks like in terms of our lives, how it manifests itself, and then, what things are actually part of like other things.
Yes. Well, like this, key example. I didn't really like plan out. Like it seems like I planned it out with like, me going through like that episode just recently. No, that like this, it really happened, and it happens sporadically to me. And I guess this is why the idea kind of jumbled loose of like, hey, what do we think is actually depression, and what actually goes hand in hand with it, with this whole spectrum of mental illness, where we are when we defined depression on one episode previously, and it boiling it down, it's very much just you putting yourself in a place where you mentally believe that like you are worthless, where you are nothing. It's a very just like it's hard darkness to deal with, and hyper focuses all the real bad things or even smaller bad things in our lives, right? But when we take that and we add in like another mental illness, kind of like anxiety, right? It can create kind of a bad cocktail, if we will, of mental illness, right? So like when we talk about anxiety, right? It can be a hard thing to deal with if you were just dealing with anxiety alone, because what is anxiety, right? It's us being anxious, it's us being worried, it's us thinking, it's getting trapped in our head constantly about thinking about the worst possible outcomes of things, or things that are like not going our way. It's constantly just like feeling it, and even like I said, manifests itself as like, I just don't feel good at this moment right now. Some people even have panic attacks because of it. I don't know, have you ever had like a panic attack or anything like that?
I have. That's not usually how my anxiety manifests itself, but I have had them, and I've seen other people have them a lot, because I have so many anxious friends.
Yes.
But I think, when we are even trying to define anxiety, I think for a lot of people, having anxiety and having depression, there's a lot of people and that have both of those, or have those both kind of interact with each other a lot, like Jelani was saying. And I think that's definitely true for both of us, but it also makes it hard to parse what is your anxiety happening, or what is your depression happening, or other things. And I guess today we're going to kind of talk about if that matters, when that matters, what things are and aren't your depression, and more importantly, how the way that we define those for ourselves kind of affects how we like treat it, not medically necessarily, but how we treat it to ourselves. And I think even when you're, to me, I would say, and I'm not this is exactly, you'll see, I'm definitely not a doctor, because my definition of depression is the sad parts, and my definition of anxiety is the parts, and that is how I would explain that.
Parts.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, I mean, very simple. Like one of the things that we run into a lot is that when we describe, or people describe like how they're feeling or something like that, sometimes they'll think it's depression, and it might not be completely 100%. It may be a mixture of like a couple other things, right? And having this kind of cocktail, I keep coming back to that word, I can't think of a better word right now, but having this mixture of of these different mental illnesses, it's not something that's it's not bad or anything like that, guys. I mean, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you're not always just going to get one that manifests itself. If you're lucky and you only have one manifest yourself, I mean, more power to you. But most people end up having one or multiple of like the different, like some people have OCD, some people have anxiety, people have depression, some people have all of those, some people have, it manifests itself different ways, and somehow people very easily kind of link the different versions of mental illness together very closely.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're experiencing them, it's not like it's not like your brain does a weird thing, and then you're like, oh, that one was my depression, or that one was my OCD. And I've gone to a bunch of different psychiatrists and psychologists, like I've talked about before, and some of them were more focused on specific diagnosis than others. And some of the ones that I liked the best were always hesitant whenever I would kind of push for a specific diagnosis. And I guess to me, it always felt like, well, if you can just tell me exactly if this thing is like OCD or just generalized anxiety, or if you can tell me if this specific thing is happening because of ADHD, then I'll feel better, And like the truth is, I did not feel better even when I did or didn't get a diagnosis. But some of the doctors that I liked the best and the therapists that I liked the best tried to impart in me that these are not necessarily like a diagnosis is a bucket. And the reason why it matters in medicine is because there's a lot of implications as to what medicines or treatments that you're allowed to get because of insurance companies. But that doesn't mean that, you know, your DSM diagnosis is the like end all be all of everything, and that because you've been diagnosed with OCD, you're only going to get classic OCD symptoms and stuff like that. So I think to some extent, it doesn't necessarily even matter what is one thing or is another thing, or at least that I would caution us against focusing on what is my depression or what is my anxiety in a clinical way. Because I think that doesn't necessarily do a lot of good for people.
And especially for us, like, we're not doctors, guys. Like, we're just here to talk to each other, and we're here to talk with you guys and relate, which is one of the things I want to bring it back around to, since I did talk a little bit about something that happened recently, and I'll probably go more into other stuff that it has happened here. I think we should focus on just one of the different aspects of this, which is anxiety, right? And what is our experiences with it? You know, have we tried certain things to try and like stem that? And you know, what for you, like, what do you think are your kind of like big experiences with anxiety by itself, you know, or feeling like that has happened to you?
Anxiety is actually the first diagnosis that I got out of all of the things. And I think that is partly because it's the easiest one. It's very easy to slap a generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis on someone in order to allow them to go on further with treatment. And for some of you guys, you may not have really seen doctors or therapists or taken medication. And so this may be a little bit more unfamiliar. But a lot of the experience that you may have, if you have gone through some of that, is that part of it is just like gatekeeping, where if you get diagnosed with blah, 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 then blah, blah, blah medicines are unlocked to you. And so I think that was the reason that I got that diagnosis first. But what that meant for me in terms of kind of then how I framed it to myself was that I was just like, this is the most boring thing that you could have said was wrong with me. And I was like, that doesn't even answer my question as to like, why is my brain doing these things? Because a lot of my identity has always been tied up in, it's fine that you're weird and that your brain does weird things. You know, you're a neurotic person, you're an anxious person. And I've always been like a perfectionist and stuff like that. So that all made sense, and was like, when the doctor said, you have anxiety, I was like, well, duh, you know? But I think that because that happened first and other things were kind of added on later, I've almost discounted the entire experience of anxiety and what that does to a person. And that's partly because I don't get a lot of physical symptoms. Like I said before, when we were talking about having panic attacks, I really rarely have had, you know, the quote unquote classic panic attack where you're hyperventilating or crying or, you know, experiencing heart palpitations and stuff like that. So that hasn't really been my experience. And partly because of that, I've been able to sort of overlook the entire experience that like anxiety is. And it's, to me, anxiety is, if I'm really looking at it, just my entire personality, you know? And so I think in that sense, I don't even pay attention to what's anxiety. And Jelani and I were talking before we started this, because we were both talking to a mutual friend who's listened to the podcast. And that was the reason we both kind of started to consider what parts of what we have been calling our depression actually might just be anxiety.
Yeah. And I think it's something very easily that people who are in a depressive state like us, that like can easily overlook and easily kind of just like blend together with everything that's going wrong and not really even think about it. And even some people who are in like you said, in the medical field or that you talk to, like they'll they'll have trouble like separating what is what, and they'll kind of like slap something on, like you said, your first experience or first thing that was like slapped onto you was the tag anxiety, disorder, right? And I think that's probably one of the easiest go-tos for a lot of people in the medical field too. Like that was one of the first ones that they had slapped me with, where when they first thought I may be dealing with depression, then they also, decided to give me like anti-anxiety pills as well to try and help with anxiety as well. Experiences in the past, besides that recent event, like I've said before, like it rarely manifests itself physically with me, but it has happened. I think recently it's happened more in the past couple years, but it's literally just like, if I can count it, like 2 times. Like I think there was the one that just recently happened, and maybe I think 1 or 2 before that. But previously to that, it hasn't happened like that in such a long time. And like for me, like when I get the physical manifestation, like I tried to describe it as best I could, but it's, you drink a lot of caffeine, right?
Yeah.
Just like me.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever had a point where it's like, oh, I've had too much caffeine, and your body just feels like,
I think a part of that is
like you're a god, or just like, oh, it's gonna feel tingly everywhere. It's like like I feel like this wash of just like, it comes out of nowhere, and like I just feel like, oh, like I kind of need to do something, but it's not that I kind of need to do something. It's like I just don't feel right where I am right now, and I just don't feel good, and it happens. And
I think part of that is literally an adrenaline thing, though, where that can kind of cause you to feel a little bit not 100% disassociated, but just sort of like not totally grounded, and it's a little bit floaty and tingly.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not exactly like taking 10 Red Bulls or something like that, but I'm saying like it's that's how the feeling feels, where it's like it's all over your body. You feel like there's this difference in your body, and it's like, okay, I've had too much of something. But this is something where it's like, oh, everything's fine, and nope, nothing's fine right now. Oh boy. And I've talked to people who have dealt with like major anxiety, major panic attacks, and I do have, surprise, surprise, I also have some certain friends who have had like dealt with like anxiety and panic attacks, because you know what, we run in those circles, don't we?
But I would ask you, well, do you think that it do you think that it matters that you mix up things that are your depression with things that are your anxiety?
And so this is where I was about to get to, where I don't think right now for me it really matters at the point for like me personally. I think that's with some other people who are dealing with it in a harsher sense. I think that it can be an issue, but for me, I don't think that like me having anxiety of where I'm worrying about like, am I in the right spot? Am I at the right? Am I in the right place in my life? Am I doing enough work? Am I not doing enough work? Am I doing this? And like all these things that like circulate in my head, they're not really affecting my mood where I'm like putting myself down because of it, right? At the moment, and I know there's some other people who deal with panic attacks and who deal with like heavy anxiety attacks and can just like feel it and then like connect it with depression, where it's like, oh my God, you are such like trash and you're garbage because you can't even like think straight. You're constantly like worrying so much. Why are you such this? And it'll constantly keep like in a cycle of just like putting themselves down. But me right now, I'm not in a place where I'm thinking and worrying about certain things. I'm trying to change my thinking on this, and I've tried to stem that back a little bit by trying to think oppositely of what I've normally done, right? And of course, I still worry about things, and that's kind of life. I think that like certain things are just going to come up and just like, oh, I don't want to be in this job anymore, but you know what? I mean, as much as I keep worrying about it, am I in the right place? I could do certain things to change it, but I'm also thinking about, it and worrying about it, I just kind of accept it at the moment as like, this is something that's normally going to pop up. I don't like what's going on. Me worrying about it is something that's dealing with one. I'm trying to like actually consciously think about, this is my anxiety. This is me just like overworking myself.
Yeah.
But
well, on that point then, aren't there sometimes that for people like us who are going to worry all the time, like, aren't there sometimes that we should be worried? You know, like some things do matter. And it's not that they necessarily matter every second. Like, it doesn't matter if you like your job every second of every day. Like, that's not going to happen. But, you know, are there some things that we should be worried about, like career things or, you know, big relationship things or, you know, even what city you're living in and stuff like that? Aren't there some things that we should be worried about? And then, like, how does having anxiety and depression make us think or not think about those things enough or at the right time?
Yeah, and I think that when you look at it, like, there are things that are important to think about, guys, like, obviously, but these are I believe normal things that like people will worry about. Like, yes, you want to worry about whether or not you are doing right in your life or doing right by you, you know, personally. And that's what I'm saying. For me right now, I don't think that separating the anxiety and depression is a necessary thing right now. I don't think it's really affecting one or the other. I think that they've kind of naturally settled where they settled at for me right now inside myself. But I know there are people who like heavily connected together, you know, and they're heavily like a thing where they affect each other. And that's like something where it's like, I know that like there are certain like aspects in people's life of like, they're worrying about like their relationships, or they're worrying about their lot in life and where they are, you know, like, should I still be in the city? Should I still be living here? This and that. And they worry and their anxiety kicks in of like, I just don't feel right. I can't think straight. It's literally freezing me up. Or it's, I have a brother who deals with, anxiety, where he's like frozen and he's afraid to do things because he feels like it's going to be an inconvenience, right? And if it's going to be an inconvenience, it's going to be too much. And then like he's on that type of level where it's like, oh, if I go to the store or something like that, something's going to happen, or like there's going to be an inconvenience where I'm going to talk to the cash register or something like that, and like something's going to happen. I'm like, going to be like, and there's going to be so much that's going to happen. And it almost like gets them worked up because it's too much to deal with for them. And that right there, where like I can see that being an issue where it's like it kind of stems together and it comes together in like a vicious cycle of like, you're putting yourself down because you can't do this, because you're worried about this, because of this. And like depression.
So I guess where it isn't useful, or I would say where it is useful is maybe just to be able to tell yourself, this one is, because I think we both associate anxiety with having sort of way too many thoughts, but they're not productive thoughts.
Yeah.
And so the point where you would maybe want to be able to be like, this is just my anxiety, is when you want to be able to kind of turn some of those thoughts or those thought cycles off.
Yeah. And there isn't really, again, with anything mental illness and anything mental health, like there's no easy road. There's no like answer. I wish I had the answer for this. Like, I mean, no matter what, we're going to constantly be stuck in our head, constantly be thinking about certain things, and depression is going to constantly rear its head out and say hi every once in a while. And it's a hard thing to deal with. And I know that there are people who have like stronger dealings with anxiety, and I think that like there are certain aspects of it that like can really be affected by depression, right? And I think a lot of things in mental health and mental illness can go hand in hand, of like, hey, it's so easy to connect these two because one affects you in a certain way and another one affects you a certain way, but like because it's affecting you this way, the other thing like lights up. And it's like, oh, it's all kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But,
and a lot of times all of that overthinking with anxiety, especially for me, will contribute to my depression, where it contributes to the idea that there's a lot of stuff that's wrong or that needs reevaluating. And it may not, that may just be my anxiety telling me it needs reevaluating, but it creates a sense of discontent that I think then translates into depression for me, where I'm like, oh, well, since I have so many areas in which I'm discontent or which I need to reevaluate, aren't I just wholly doing badly as a person, you know? And that's when it sort of tips over into depression for me. But I think, I guess for me, the difference between anxiety and depression does make, it does matter to me what's anxiety and what's depression. Because I was even thinking, I told you guys earlier in the podcast about how on Monday I was having having a bad day for no reason, where I felt like, as Jelani put it, depression reared its ugly head again. And that kind of made me realize, well, this is a new feeling for me in the past couple of weeks. And then it made me go, oh my God, was I even depressed during those weeks? I don't think so. I think I was just a normal amount of anxious and or OCD and or whatever other things I have. And I was like not depressed during those couple of weeks, or like not experiencing symptoms of my depression. And so that's shocking to me, I guess, because at this point, so much of my personality or what I identify with is like, oh, being a depressed person, being an anxious person and stuff like that, to the point where I almost don't recognize if the symptoms are gone. And then that means that I can't tell if I'm feeling any better. So I can't tell if any of the things that I'm trying are making me feel better, because I expect things to be bad all the time. And that is, I think, what the depression part is. And that's why I originally brought this up as, are you sure you're depressed? Because for me, if you had asked me, are you sure you're depressed? I'd be like, yeah, for sure. I'm like depressed right now. But I think that I didn't realize how good I was feeling until it went away. And to me, feeling good can still be feeling anxious, but it is not feeling depressed. So I guess that's where, for me, it matters in my personal experience that I do a better job sorting out what things are symptoms of what. Because for some reason in my head, I've decided I can perfectly function as an anxious person, and that being anxious is really a strength because it makes you pay attention to stuff.
No.
But for some reason, I've decided that, like, if I'm depressed, then I can't get stuff done, and that is somehow bad.
Yeah. And that's what it's going back into it like that, where I think that, like, there will never, I don't think that, like, I've talked about it before, it was like, oh, do we think our depression go away, or do we think that the mental health can be like perfect? I don't think that there is a completely cleared like slate of like, oh, there's nothing wrong, but I think that there is a balance that you can find within yourself of like the things that you have, where you can be your best self, where it's almost like you can be an anxious person, or some will have like the OCD stuff, but like have it perfectly balanced within yourself, where it's not tipping the scale and like causing you to really cause self-harm to yourself mentally or physically or anything like that, and I think it can speak volumes. Like, yeah, I mean, perhaps that you had found like a way to like really like balance yourself out, like for a short period of time, and hopefully we can get back to that at some point, where we really find what made you happy and what really like balanced you out. But
I think part of that is just that my stress tolerance is so high, and anxiety sort of makes me stressed, where depression makes me like sad or empty. And I'm fine if there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, I'm fine if there's a lot of thoughts going on, even if many of the thoughts are bad. But then with the depression, like when I don't want to say when the depression kicks in, but that's kind of sometimes what it feels like, then it's like all the thoughts are gone and there's just emptiness. And that's the thing that really bothers me. I can deal with like an infinite amount of like stressful input, but then like when it's all gone, then I'm really upset. And so I think I need to re-examine like what I was doing differently in the last couple of weeks, because whatever it was working for me and it was good. But I also this time want to pay more attention to whether I'm feeling good, and whether I'm actually feeling depressed, because I think that has a big effect on like what stuff I should continue doing or not continue doing. And part of it is not just what's depression and what's anxiety, but part of it's what's depression, what's anxiety, and what is this persona that you've created for yourself as just a sad person that maybe is true or isn't true, but like maybe for me like doesn't have to be true all the time. And if I can just sort some of that out, then I can like monitor my mood better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite interesting, really, because when we look at it, like we have two very different views on like our personal like dealing with anxieties and stuff like that. For you, it's you're okay with looking at everything connected and everything, like not leaving certain things out. You think that, you know, everything is, you're hyper focusing on everything. And me, I'm separating the one thing. I was like, that doesn't matter. I'm just like focusing on one thing, and
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting. And I don't know what everyone out there would be doing. I mean, let us know what do you guys think? What do you guys are feeling out there? Maybe someone out there is dealing with it in a different way. You know, you could always like let us know on our social medias or an email if you guys want. That's, you know, yikesland@gmail.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some things that, you know, like I was saying earlier, that you should be sad about, or that you should, not that I want you to be sad, but just things that make sense that you would be sad about. Like after the most recent presidential election, you know, there's a lot of articles out there that was like, there's a lot of women who are now getting diagnosed with depression and anxiety because of the political climate.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you really believe that your safety or your political identity and stuff like that is threatened, then it makes logical sense. And that's when I say you quote unquote should feel upset or anxious. You know, or like if you really think about climate change, you probably should be stressed out.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me where we decide the line is about things that we're supposed to be stressed out about and anxious about. But then I guess the difference would be, is it a productive anxiety where you're like, okay, now that I'm stressed about this, I'm going to do more recycling or whatever. You know, I'm going to get involved politically. Or is it just something that's hurting you, in which case maybe that thing's not working for you?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that there are certain levels of anxiety that people should be able to experience. And it's okay to experience anxiety at certain points, like you just said. And it shouldn't be grouped into your depression, really, where it's putting yourself down because you have anxiety on certain things. It happens. People stress out about certain things. People feel anxious about things in their life, and people who have major anxiety disorder, where they feel anxious about everything, even the small things, like, you know, that is something that you are dealing with personally. And I hope that you guys, you know, really take a look at it and really seek help for it and talk to people about it, and talk to your mental health provider if you have one, or just your doctor or somebody, anyone. But it's something that where it's connected under the spectrum of mental health, mental illness. But I think that, you know, having it completely connected with your depression is something that you don't want to have happen. But because no matter what, I think everyone will, at certain levels, always feel anxious or feel worried or stressed out about something. And it's about trying to separate those things a little bit, or a lot of it. I don't know what the word is, to a point where, like, okay, I can deal with my anxiety, I can deal with my depression in certain ways, but they don't have to be hand in hand, a stronger tag team of mental illness bogging me down. You know, it's I don't know what the word is. I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, I guess I would argue that it matters the most when it comes to the effect that it has on you. And so if for me you're like imagining that I have both of these things happening to me at once, even if sometimes it's more one thing than the other, makes me feel powerless, then it's a bad thing that I'm thinking of them as tied together. You know, and there may be some benefit to having granularity there in terms of symptoms when you're talking to your therapist. And, you know, if you're seeing somebody and you're wondering, like, is this more this thing or more the other thing, you know, they might be able to provide some insight. But then there's a lot of it that just is going to be stressful to parse, and maybe then at that point, that's when you would stop being like, it matters so much for me to figure out which thing this is. Because that's happened to me too, where I'm like, it matters so much for me to figure out whether these specific thoughts are anxiety in a general way or OCD. And it's like, even if somebody could give me the answer to that, what would it really do? I'm still having like a harmful, stressful thought and like not teaching myself to just not have that thought. Instead, I'm like, tell me which one it is though. Tell me, And so there are obviously some places where that maybe doesn't make a difference, or maybe you're using it as a distraction like I do from really addressing the problem. And I guess I would also say that I think whether or not you have depression as part of your, like whether or not you've adopted depression or anxiety or whatever as part of your identity has a really big effect on then whether it matters so much whether you figure out if you're really feeling depressed at any given time. Because we have been talking to mutual friend of ours. I already said that before. Okay, cut this part out.
No, it's gonna keep going.
Oh no. Just like the choking. What was I talking about? Oh, okay. All right. Now this is blooper. It's gone on so long. What was the connection that I was making? Oh my God. I like brain flipped out.
Oh no.
Okay. So a conversation that we had been having, I think July and I both had separately with a friend of ours. No, I don't know what it is. I literally don't know what it
is. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, folks out there, I hope that you guys at least are, talking to someone out there or trying to figure out exactly what is connected to what, and if it's right to actually like be hand in hand with everything mentally, and hopefully you are seeking help, or you're talking to somebody, or you just like me and Chris here, where we do this podcast and we talk about different things and really get in depth with it sometimes, and we hope that you guys are finding someone out there to relate to help you think about it more. And that's mainly what this podcast is. We're just trying to get you to think more about how you're dealing with it, or if it's affecting you in certain ways that maybe you could be trying to do different things. I think we're all taking different paths. I mean, we all deal with it differently. Chris deals with her mental health differently than I deal with mine as well. But I think that like we can relate, and we can agree on certain things or disagree on certain things if you guys do, and that's fine. That's who we are. We're all humans, and we're here. We're all just trying to make it to next Tuesday and every other Yikesland as well. Yeah. Right.
To wrap up, we were going to do one more of our recurring segments.
Oh, which one?
It's your favorite one. It's depression foods.
Oh, depression foods.
I know Jelani has something special to share here. So.
Yeah, I'm a monster, guys. So I was, what is it? I was at home one day, and I was like, I'm hungry. Time for dinner. What am I going to eat? And guess what? I've said I've done it before. I had a popcorn dinner, guys. Yay! And
everybody loves a popcorn dinner.
Everyone loves popcorn dinner. I wish I could have gone to the movie theater and just grabbed up a big tub of that popcorn instead of popping this microwave one. But
they do let you buy popcorn at the movie theater without purchasing a movie ticket.
This changes everything.
I went in and I asked.
This changes everything, guys. But yes, I popped the popcorn dinner, and my depression food was looked around, and I was like, I talked about it before. I like spicing up my popcorn here and there, but not health, not with anything healthy. And so I saw that I had a bag of Cheetos, and they weren't just regular Cheetos, they were flaming hot Cheetos. So I crushed them shits up, and I just crushed them up, and I threw them on the popcorn, and I basically seasoned my popcorn with crushed flaming hot Cheetos, and that was my dinner, guys. And I felt like such a garbage monster afterwards. Or it's like that point where it's like, Shouldn't have done that.
But I think that it has some key features of a classic depression food, because it's like, it's easy and it's fast.
Yes.
And it's salty, and then it has a weird flavor, like because a lot of, ramen has like flavor packets.
Yes.
And I feel like you're really into the odd additional flavor in your depression food.
I add the odd additional flavors.
Yeah, you're always like, it's this but twist.
Yes. And I messaged you like completely right afterwards. I was like, so guess what I did? And I just thought, I was like, oh, this shouldn't be a recurring thing, but it probably will be. Yes. Have you had
we'll check back in with you.
Have
later.
You had any weird depression foods lately?
No, I haven't had. Well, okay, it's not weird, but I've been eating mostly Girl Scout cookies recently.
I don't think that's,
which is fine for people, but I'm for sure doing it in a way where it's because when I'm at work, I have like legitimately a case of Girl Scout cookies in my office.
Nice.
And rather than leave the building to even go across the street, partly because of social interactions and the cold, or if it's getting dark, I will just eat Girl Scout cookies as a meal instead.
Nice.
So like, even though the cookie itself, like lots of people are eating Girl Scout cookies these days, it's that time of year, it's the motivation for eating it that I think is what makes it a depression food, because I'm like doing it to avoid the world,
Yeah.
And I think that's what a depression food is.
It's very easy to just down boxes. Of
Your depression
cookies.
food is never like, I took myself out to dinner, because no, that would be too much social interaction and getting dressed.
What is your Girl Scout cookie of choice?
It is Caramel Delights.
Give me a high five right there. That's right. Look at that. Podcast buddies.
Yeah, they are so good. But I've had already 10 today.
It's not enough. It's not enough. You need to up your
quota. It's not the best.
You need to up your quota.
That'll cure me.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. Maybe just no one's eaten enough Girl Scout cookies to get cured. So, I'll let you guys know.
We'll let you guys know. Maybe that's what it was. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us here on another great Yikesland podcast. If you guys got any questions, comments, or anything like that, or, you can send it to us on Twitter, Facebook at Yikesland. Instagram is our main source of posting. That is at Yikesland_podcast. That's Yikesland_podcast. That is our Instagram page there. That's the main page where we post updates and things like that. But we do connect the other social media pages as well. So if you guys got any questions or comments, or just want to share and like us, please do. The video version of this goes up if you're listening to the audio version on our YouTube page. You can find links to that on our social media pages if you guys will. And if you guys get a chance and you're listening to it on an audio service, please head over to your audio service of choice and give us a like or some ratings or reviews and stuff like that, guys. That really helps us get viewed more, or get listened to more, if you will, and that helps us out a lot to build the show to be a little bit bigger, so we can relate to more people out there. We really appreciate that. And if you guys got any topic ideas or questions or things like that you'd like to discuss with us, even if you just want to reach out and just talk with us, or just send your own story about some of the topics we've had in the past, you can send it to our emails at Yikesland. Yikesland@gmail.com. I do this every time with the email. I don't know why I keep doing that.
Yikesland@gmail.com. You can let us know what you thought of today's episode. Whether you think, Jelani, are you sure you're depressed?
Who knows?
Or you can give us topic ideas for upcoming episodes. We appreciate all of that.
Yeah.
If you guys are feeling like you need a resource to reach out to, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24/7. It's completely confidential and free. They can be reached at 1-800-273-8255. And that's a fantastic resource if you are feeling like you're in a dark place and you need someone to reach out to.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for reading that off. Folks out there, thank you so much for making it to another Tuesday with us. The most important thing that we feel out there for us out there is not that a lot of people are listening to the podcast, but those who are and those who are joining us here are making it to every Tuesday with us as a goal of not just listening to our podcast, but because we can make it to every Tuesday. And we enjoy you guys being here with us, and we want you to continue being here with us, because if you weren't here with us, it'd be a darker world. And we want you here in the world with us as a community, as my yikes out there. And, thank you. This has been your host, Jelani Hoon, along with host
Chris Fung.
And I love you guys.